always loved Fireflies because they're in my backyard at home growing up. And when I decided I wanted to do a liquor brand in 2000, it was all stodgy old crest, family crest labels. So I thought a critter label had a shot. And then one Christmas, my wife grew up in Savannah, Georgia. Her family's been there for 300 years, so they have a fair amount of coffee table books. And I went through all the coffee table books about the South and wrote down names, and the two most frequent names were Fireflies or Magnolias. And I knew Magnolia wasn't gonna work. My name's Scott Newitt, and I'm co-owner of Firefly with my partner, Jim Irvin. And our titles are the Firefly Guys.
The Firefly Guys.
No presidents, no CEOs. We were talking to the architects about how we wanted this place to feel. I said, I want a county park that serves adult beverages. And that's really what we've built on the outside.
I'm Devyn Whitmire. People from South Carolina, like myself, are proud of their state and everything it has to offer. But even we don't know every nook and cranny. So we're traveling to the most charming places in the Palmetto State. Some of them you know, and some of them even we have never heard of. From Discover South Carolina, it's the Palmetto Porch. This episode, we're in North Charleston at the Firefly Distillery. Tell us a little bit about yourself. You're not originally from North Charleston, right?
No, I grew up in South Louisiana and have been in the alcohol business since my teens because when I grew up, when you were 18, you could consume alcohol, so I bartended.
Okay. So take us on the journey of what brought you to land here.
So I worked for Gallo Winery, which is the largest winery in the world, and I was in sales and marketing and management. And over 11 years, they moved me 6 times because if you wanted to get promoted, you had to be willing to move.
Okay.
So, and I was newly married, and we moved. We lived in Georgia, Texas. We lived in North Carolina and South Carolina and Florida. And we were starting to have kids, and my wife's from Savannah, Georgia, and I'm from outside of New Orleans. And we both loved Charleston, and I said, this is where we should do it, because we like salt in the air, and we like mud in the air. And so I went to work for one of my customers who was a distributor who distributed spirits, wine, and beer. And I didn't have to travel, and I didn't have to do a lot of things, so I could be home raising a family. And during that time, I met my partner, Jim, who started a winery on Wadmalaw called Irvin House Vineyards. And we became his distributor, and then we became friends. And I told him, I said, I have this dream to make vodka, and I think we can make it out of your wine, which is what we did. Our very first vodka was muscadine vodka.
So how did you first get into the spirits and wine industry? What was the true start for you?
The true start was working at a bar in Baton Rouge and going from bar back to bartender while I was in college. And then after college, and I played music all throughout South Louisiana during college. So I was always in bars, big bars in New Orleans. And when I graduated in finance and accounting and thought I should go do something proper, which was be a banker. So I went to work for a bank in Atlanta and met my wife-to-be. I did that for 2 years and figured out what I didn't want to do.
Can you think of the first time that you brought this sort of passion that you had and turned this into your career?
I don't know if I'm going to answer your question, but the attraction to having my own business was instilled from when I was in the distributor business. I would go for 2 weeks to France to go buy wines and taste wines, and I went to South America, and all of these places were family-owned businesses, and I was growing a family, my wife and I really liked that idea. And so really the inner, whatever I'm looking for, motivation for me was to start a business that my family could be a part of. I saw Mr. Livingston and his wife and his 2 boys ran this Napa vineyard that started in the 70s, and they were all and it was just an awesome way of life.
Can you tell us what's involved in making spirits? Is that work difficult?
You know, the most difficult part is the beginning. So you either make wine or you make beer, wine out of fruits, beer out of grains. And then knowing how to do that to make the best wort, W-O-R-T, so you can throw it in the still is the magic. And my partner Jim does all of that. My partner Jim's about to turn 78, and he has a degree in chemistry from Vanderbilt. He's also a winemaker and a brewer. So there's not many distillers that are winemakers, and winemakers understand balance, and he really understands how to balance flavors. So you take the wine or the beer and you put it in the still and you pull the alcohol out of it. You know, it's fortunate that alcohol boils around 177 degrees, depending on barometric pressure, and water does not. So you're pulling the alcohol out and you're leaving all of the beer, the wort, and that's left over. So we started on Wadmalaw, and we blew up nationally in '09. Rightly so, the city didn't want a lot of traffic on Wadmalaw. So we started looking in 2011. We found this place in North Charleston in 2015 and bought it from the city. And it took us 5 years to complete our 20,000 square foot distillery and our 2 5,000 square foot rick houses, and opened up February 13th, 2020.
It's a really beautiful property. Can you tell me, as someone who maybe hasn't come in and experienced this place, what are people going to see and feel and experience when they come to Firefly?
Yeah, so when you drive in, it's a gravel road like our old place, which we really like. When you hit the gate, you're going to see our beautiful distillery, which looks like the old tasting room on Wadmalaw, just 10 times bigger. We have a huge area up front for picnic tables because we have live music off the front porch on Saturdays. We have a back porch that we do live music off of for smaller crowds. And then we do giant concerts with Live Nation with a roll-in stage 20 times a year.
20 times a year.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're rocking. What kinds of challenges did you run into when you were moving from Wadmalaw to here?
You know, the really one big challenge was COVID-19.
No, really?
Because we opened up February 13th and we were shut down a month later.
Stop.
Yeah.
What was that like?
You know, it was scary for a lot of people. But when we started our sweet tea vodka, it was the Great Recession. It seems like every time we start something, there's a tragedy, which is awful. So we won't start anything new. But, you know, we quickly pivoted because we always have to pivot because we're small business people, and to making hand sanitizer. And we made, $250,000 worth of hand sanitizer and gave it to hospitals and sold it to the public and gave it to the military. Thankfully, our state opened up a lot earlier than other states, and we were able to sell alcohol to go out of our Airstream. Outside, everything's perfectly safe because it was COVID.
Yeah.
They may have been doing it on the West Coast, but we started a first outdoor festival called Safe Sounds.
Tell me about that.
And yeah, we brought in a portable stage. We took bike racks and made 10-foot by 10-foot squares. They were all 10 feet apart from each other. We had 200 on the field. You could buy a square and only have 4 people in it. And we had great concerts during COVID outside.
How did you come up with that idea for a festival like that?
Well, I have a friend who's a promoter who came to me and said, hey, we need to do something so we can pay our bills. And I said, you're right. And he started throwing ideas because he's a promoter. And he said, how about we do I've seen them, they're doing drive-in theaters, on your field. And I said, no, I don't want the optics of us serving drinks to people in cars. So we settled on doing the music because that's what he does, is music.
And speaking of music, you were in a band.
I was.
Right. What instrument did you play? Can you tell us about that?
I played trap set. I've played since I was 7.
7?
Yeah.
How did you get started with drums and music?
Well, I had a really bad temper as a kid. Awful. If we lost a baseball game, I was yelling at everybody and crying and throwing my bat. So my parents said, we need to get rid of some energy. So they bought me a drum set, and I've been playing ever since.
What kind of bands were you in growing up?
We did a lot of covers. I grew up, I was born in 1965, so I started playing with bands when I was 11. So we played whatever was being played then.
In a garage, maybe?
In a garage,
yeah.
for sure. And as I got older and into college, I really got into, alternative 80s music, like the Talking Heads, and we had 2 girl singers, and a lot of that music from the early 80s. And then as I became an adult, I wanted to check out bluegrass, so I played in a bluegrass band 20 years ago called 17 South.
Okay.
Which was fun to make the drum set a lot smaller and not as many cymbals. And then I played at church for 20 years. But I really haven't played with a group since COVID. COVID really put the hamper down on that.
You got to get back.
I'd have to, yeah. All the guys I play with, though, have high school students, and they're all busy, and they're younger, and I'll get back to it.
You get back to it. It's funny that you mentioned playing at church. That's where I sing. I've sang my whole life. Why did you feel like it was important to incorporate so much music here?
Well, we've been doing it since 2008, because I was in a few bands, and I understand how hard it is to make money doing that. Mm-hmm. So in 2009, we bought an old RV, wrapped it with Firefly, and told local bands they could use that. They'd have to pay for the gas and everything, but they could use it as long as they went out and promoted Firefly honestly, which we did that from 2008 till about 2015 with bands locally. I mean, when we opened this place, before we knew about COVID, we were going to do 1 big concert a year. Hopefully next year we'll do 25 large concerts and another 10 small ones. We've had Chapel Rowan this year, right before she blew up.
That's insane.
We had Jimmy Allen before he blew up. We've had Band of Horses. We've had T-Pain, Trampled by Turtles. We've had Del McCoury, who's probably one of the most famous bluegrass guys playing currently. He's in his 80s. We had Willie Nelson last year, October 17th.
Wow.
So we've had some really cool shows.
I want to go back to your relationship with your partner.
Yeah.
And tell me a little bit more about that and why partnership is such a huge element to what you guys do.
Yeah, so when we met in 2003, we were total opposites. We still are. He had never worked for anybody but himself. He's 19 years older than me. And I had always worked in corporate America. So he really taught me how to leave corporate America to be an entrepreneur. And I taught him a lot about corporate America and dealing with big customers. But we are really good friends and really good partners. And next year's 20 years. And he's responsible for everything inside the bottle, and I'm responsible for everything outside the bottle. That's our one-page operating agreement, and we're 50-50.
I love that. When did you know that you had something special?
So our first vodka was muscadine, which nobody understood, and I got us into about 4 states, and it taught us a lot. When we came out with sweet tea vodka, and I was at the University of South Carolina calling on an account with my distributor, and I walked in, and there were 3 girls at the bar who had bought from the bartender the whole bottle of Firefly and was pouring it over into a pitcher of ice. I said, I think we have something.
And you own not just the distillery, but also Tom and Huck, right? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so we made a decision a couple years ago. Well, actually, we made a decision and actually made whiskey and bourbon in 2011. And we sold a little bit under the Firefly label. But I decided everything can't be Firefly. I mean, Firefly to me is vodka and moonshine, and it's really easy to drink. It's got a fair amount of sugar in there. It's non-offensive, tastes awesome. But, you know, as you age, your palate grows and you want to drink less sweet. Mm-hmm. So we started our whiskey company, and we call it Tom and Huck. That's not Jim and I, although Jim grew up on the Ohio River and I grew up on the Mississippi River. It's really about adventure and friendship. And I just like Tom and Huck. Sounds better than Jim and Scott. And we're making 3 whiskey brands. One is a flavored whiskey brand with half the sugar as our vodkas or moonshines called Steel Feathers. The other is an American whiskey called Bend and Steel, which is an amazing whiskey if you like whiskey. It's a blend of 2 bourbons, one from Kentucky, an R bourbon, and white whiskey from Indiana. And the reason we use those 3 areas is because Jim was born in Indiana, he was raised in Kentucky, and he moved here in 1979. And the brand's name is Bend and Steel because we bend barrels that we steal from others. That's what we say.
Sounds like everything is so thoughtful and y'all's story is so well put together in the product that you're presenting. What does it mean to you as a musician to have been a part of creating something like Firefly?
Well, it's really a dream come true. I've really, I wanted to play in bands, and this is as close as I can get to it, that, play in front of 5,000 people.
Is your family often here? Your wife was here when I walked in, because this really is a family business, like you mentioned.
So my wife works here. My youngest son works here. My oldest son and daughter worked here, but they're gone. They're, live in other states. And my partner, Jim, and his wife work here. Their son's our general manager, head distiller. Their granddaughter is our 3rd-generation distiller, blender. Jay, our general manager's wife, is our human resources. So yeah, it's very much a family business.
You're living your dream.
Yeah, absolutely.
How does that feel?
I'm waiting for the shoe to fall. It's great. It's awesome.
So I want to kind of end our time and just ask you any final thoughts, anything you want to leave us with, whether that's why someone should come to Firefly, whether what's special about South Carolina and North Charleston for your family, anything that you want to leave us with to kind of end our time.
I love South Carolina. I've lived here for 22 years and grew up in South Louisiana. I encourage anybody to come visit South Carolina because it's just beautiful.
To learn more about this and all the towns we're featuring on the show, visit scpalmettoporch.com. The Palmetto Porch is produced by Discover South Carolina in partnership with Pod People. Special thanks to our production team at Pod People, Lauren Luco, Ben Sauls, Lauren Sauls, Grace Pina, and Kim Wong.